ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 201 of the Scholars of Wrestling Show. I'm your man behind the microphone and your current reigning Scholars of Wrestling champion, Scholar Jeff. Yes, indeed, I have not forgotten about that. Do not you worry, Scholar Tarek. Now, you may be wondering, where are the melodious sounds of the voices of my two regular co-hosts? Well, now, in short, is their turn to be out of action with other, let's say, obligations. And they totally have not been abducted by aliens again. So either way, I'm flying solo today. So it figures I just need to make up for lost time. Both of our trusty scholars, Scholar Tark and Scholar Brian, wow, I'm recording this late at night. It's we're all have long busy days. So, I know it's no excuse, but who cares? I'm flying solo. It's my show for at least one night only. Okay, now we got all the laughs out of the way. I would like to switch over to, if I could be serious for a moment, sorry, Lance Storm. I was not able to say this earlier, but I'm going to say it now. In celebration of 200 episodes, 200. Truth be told, I really don't know what to make of that number. We've been doing this for a while. Almost every single week we've been getting together, rising from the ashes, schooling the masses, and I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't personally say a little something. So before we get started with the show today, I'd just like to say thank you all for every single episode you've ever listened to, even if it's just been for a few seconds. Every click, every bit of support, every like on a post anywhere across the internet, no matter where you've checked us out or given us the slightest bit of support. For that, we give our sincere thanks. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I thank you to every single one of you who made this Scholars of Wrestling project worthwhile and continues to do so. But most of all, I would not be here without saying thank you to my good friends, Scholar Tark and Scholar Brian. You guys are my legitimate friends. And you know what? I'll tell you it flat out. Scholars of Wrestling is not Scholars of Wrestling in my eyes without you guys doing it with me. So thank you all. Thank you all so much. And with that, I will stop being. I will be somewhat less serious, but in all seriousness, thank you all for all your support. It's very much appreciated. And Scholars of Wrestling, you make Scholars of Wrestling what it is, at least to me. But anywho, let's get back to the rest of this week in wrestling, because there certainly is a lot to cover. But first, we do need to typically peek behind the curtain and check in on a little of what we like to call backstage news. And no, in case you're curious, cannot do the echo on my own. You're just gonna have to wait for Scholar Tarek and Scholar Brian to come back in action so they can back me up on that. Meh. But anyway, now we're looking back at backstage news. Unfortunately, it's not all that good. For as if you've been paying attention to the world of wrestling at all this week, unfortunately, this week we lost some of the all-time greats. Specifically, on Wednesday morning, we lost Bruno Sammartino, aged 82. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Number one, can I possibly say that has not already been said by so many other wrestling historians and fans of all generations? Well, truth be told, I don't feel like I can. But you know what? This show is named Scholars of Wrestling, and you simply cannot have a show called Scholars of Wrestling without talking about someone to the degree and magnitude of a Bruno Sammartino, someone who sold out the Madison Square Garden. Again, this is an East Coast based show. I think all of us have been to Madison Square Garden on several occasions. So when we're talking about someone like Bruno Sammartino, keep in mind, we're basically talking about a hometown boy for us. A big, brute, really strong, raw bone looking dude, even into his old age. He out just headlining night after night at Madison Square Garden in our own backyard, that even though he wasn't a part of the generation I started watching wrestling in, it's very, very hard for me personally not to take some personal stock in this. Not just as a wrestling fan, but as an East Coast boy. Whenever I look at some of the videos of some of his old matches, it really is just a throwback to a different time in wrestling, a completely different style and a completely different mentality. And in so many different ways, I feel like I've relearned about Bruno Sammartino that I thought I knew before, but I'm seeing in a whole new way now. Just seeing how much people loved him, how much some of the veterans and people who have been watching wrestling for a very, very long time, people of my parents' generation, the people who can actually truly remember seeing what it was like watching Bruno Sammartino in his heyday. Looking back, it's the kind of experience that I can look back and on saying and think, you know what? You're so lucky to have seen him when in his prime. Just seeing the way certain feuds were built and the hype behind them, and not just when they worked, but how they worked and why they worked so well. I'll tell you one thing. For the younger wrestling fans who are watching today, and even for my generation who grew up around the Attitude Era, there's a certain magic to looking back and seeing the way things were done before. But not just what happened back then, but also seeing why they happened the way that they did. For me, that's something you just can't come across every day. It's that kind of history and artistry, and just it gives you a different level of appreciation for the art form that we love as wrestling. And truth be told, if I'm being very honest, it's the kind of thing that makes me a scholar of wrestling in the first place. It's the kind of reasons why I am proud to wear the title. I'm not just talking about the Scholars of Wrestling Championship. I am talking about me carrying the title of a scholar of wrestling. And I think I'm not the only one when I say that. So in any case, Godspeed, Bruno. Hopefully we'll get to see you down the road again, and you're having some incredible matches with the likes of Eddie Guerrero and whoever else. So either way, thank you, Bruno, for decades and upon decades of memories. And not for nothing, thank goodness for all the technology we've got, because now we can go on the WWE Network and we can check it out anytime. As a matter of fact, I believe there's actually a new documentary that's going to be airing on the WWE Network this Monday. I believe it's right around the time of Raw, if not right after. I know I'm going to be looking out for it. So yeah, thankfully that's all with the somber things this week. Now we can look towards the future. We look forward to more interesting and more exciting shows, because we've got a doozy on our hands. We've got next Friday the Greatest Royal Rumble. And if you take one look at the card, it's kind of hard to debate that. They've got a heck of a card here. I believe it's as of this show posting, it's going to be next week, Friday at noon, I believe. So anyway, it would not be a major show without a prediction thereof. Even though my fellow scholars will not be joining me this evening, I would be remiss if I didn't put down some predictions of my own. So here we go. This is the Greatest Royal Rumble predictions from me, and I'm sure you're going to be seeing the rest of the predictions from my fellow scholars somewhere across social media, somewhere across the internet. Let's dive right in. Starting off with, I do not think this is going to be the opener. I'll tell you this right now, but this is just the way I have it on my tentative card. We've got The Undertaker versus Rusev. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. This went through quite the journey to get on this card. First, Rusev and Undertaker are going to be in a casket match. That much we know. Then suddenly, Rusev's social media goes crazy, and now we're getting Undertaker versus Chris Jericho. Awesome. Now, not even a matter of days later, and we're getting Undertaker versus Rusev back to go again. In case you're wondering, no, I do not yet know the reason why this was occurring any more than you probably do. If you're watching this in the future, beyond April 20th, 2018, you probably know the reason already. But come on, let me have my fun and mystery for just for maybe a week or so. But anyway, you don't want to hear me go into conspiracy theories, at least not yet, not for this one. So the question remains, who goes over? Well, I think it's safe to say that The Undertaker is going to give the people a show. This is just more of I see this as being more of a farewell tour for The Undertaker, for lack of more precise terms. Someone like Rusev, in my opinion, he can get away with just being in the ring with The Undertaker, mixing it up, guiding him through the steps. He'll basically absorb the push by osmosis. He does not necessarily need to win. This is probably one of the more obvious to call in some people's eyes, but yeah, this one's going for The Undertaker. Moving on to the next match, we've got the Intercontinental title ladder match. We've got The Miz versus Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe. This one's a little bit trickier. I'm thinking about this, and I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. I'll tell you what I would like to see happen, though. In order to free all but one of these gentlemen up for a future feud, I'm going to say The Miz gets it. In my opinion, yeah, I just honestly want to see The Miz keep the belt for as long as possible, become a record-setting champion, and make that just part of his deal. Continue making the Intercontinental title the most must-see championship on TV. At least in his mind. Meanwhile, Rollins, Balor, and Samoa Joe can move on to whatever else they're doing. Which, if you're Samoa Joe, hopefully involves Roman Reigns in a title match. But we'll get to that in a minute. Until then, we're moving on to the SmackDown Tag title match where we're meeting the Bludgeon Brothers versus the Usos. This is another one of those matches, to me, that really kind of reeks of just putting a high-profile match on a high-profile show with no interest in making a compelling narrative to make you convinced that a legitimate title change is going to take place. Because I really don't think it's going to happen. At least not here. I picked the Bludgeon Brothers to retain. They're on too big of a roll. They are too over. They looked way too strong. And let's face it, them holding on to the titles can introduce this one very new dynamic. So many top teams, including the Usos, including the New Day, actually being a place where they can all chase together. Can you imagine a Bludgeon Brothers, Usos, and New Day ladder match? Think about that for a minute. Not a bad picture, is it? Well, I personally don't think so. So yeah, hopefully we can see all these guys in a ladder match and they can tear it down. But in the meantime, speaking of exciting tag teams, we have what I consider one of the most wonderful tag teams going today. I am of course talking about Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy versus The Bar for the Raw Tag Team titles. I do not see Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy not walking away with the straps. I might be of a controversial, thank you English majors, I might be of a controversial opinion here, but I honestly think Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy, in their current states, are among one of the most entertaining things WWE has to offer right now.